Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to our first in-season podcast. We hope all of our listeners had a chance to enjoy our four preseason podcasts. As Hashim, your host, I'm here with Commissioner of the League and my co-host Zahid. Ziggy, you there, buddy?
Ash, how you doing, bro?
Doing well, man. Crazy. We're already 6 games in. We're done our first trimester of the season, which kind of is pretty shocking how fast it's flown by. And we just wrapped up the long weekend break, which is a bit of a break before we have 4 straight weeks of games.
Yeah, we've gone through 6 games already. If it almost like felt like the season wouldn't start, and then once we got started, everything just came so fast and furious.
It just flew by. I agree completely.
Yeah, so now we're through 6 games, and we'll have to see what the next 4 weeks that we got straight
Yeah.
have in total. So we'll see what happens.
So let's start with some of the bigger storylines. So if our listeners had a chance to take in our preseason podcast, there were certain teams that were mentioned more than others as favorites and teams to watch going into the season. Those two that were primarily mentioned were the Muggles, who had a great core of Rayhan and Owais going into the draft and had the first pick overall in Shaheen Limbada. All three guys have performed exactly to their expectations, maybe even above them in some cases, and they've been clicking on all cylinders. On the other end, we had the Abbasids. People were mentioning that the talent is there, and Bilal and Samir had a great draft, and it led to them having a lot of promise and a lot of belief that they'd be the team to beat this year. However, shockingly, we see the Mughals closer to the top and the Abbasids closer to the bottom of the standings. I know that's especially been difficult for you to handle because as a lifelong Mughal until this season, you're used to seeing the Mughals at the top. Sadly, we're used to seeing the Abbasids being at the bottom, except if you happen to be on the bottom part of that standing this time around.
Hey, man, it's so early on in the season. We got lots of games still to be played. So yeah, the Moguls are where we expected they would be, and they've played great so far this season. They've done exactly what we'd expected. The Abbasids have had a tough run so far, but they got 2 wins and they broke the 20-game curse that they had before. So I don't know. Things could change.
I can't believe it was 20. That's unreal.
Yeah, you would think, right? You get luck one weekend where maybe a couple of guys from another team you're playing against are missing, whatever. You're able to get an easy win or something like that. But yeah, it's almost been a season and a half that they didn't have a win. But they finally got the 2 wins that they needed last weekend, and obviously they probably didn't want the break to happen because they wanted to keep the momentum going. But the break was there, and now they just got to get remotivated and try to bounce back in the next 4 weeks that we've got.
Well, before we continue talking about the rest of the league, I feel like I owe an apology to a certain team, namely the Ayubids, because we started talking about two other teams that we mentioned. The team that shockingly, by surprise to many, is sitting atop of the standings with an incredible, empowering offense and a defense that's holding its own too.
It's when I look at their games every single week. Nothing against them, but it's shocking the number of runs they've put up so far in 6 games. Like they have twice as many runs scored as the Abbasids and almost twice as many runs scored as the Ottomans, which are two teams that are in the right now in the middle of the standings. That's just phenomenal. They've got guys who are having career years like Mike Arlett, Hassan Zubair, um, Omer Sheikh is having a good year. Gibran's finally had a good week. I don't know how they're putting all this together, but I think they've scored a total of 12 or 14 runs almost every single game that they've played, which is phenomenal. While other teams are struggling to put up that many runs in a single game.
So Zahid, here's a crazy stat for you. I'm looking at the batting stats for this season, the league leaders. I pull up who's leading the league in doubles. First place with 4 doubles, Michael Arler the Ubids. Second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth, Hassan Zubair, Basir Yassin, Akib Kokar, Gibran Wakar, Shoaib Gaya, all with 3 each of the Ayubids. Ninth place, tied for third overall, you can say, with 2 doubles, Omer Sheikh. So you have a total of 7 guys that are leading in doubles. which is insane. Not even taking into account the fact that these guys are hitting home runs too. I mean, Gibbs has 4 on the season. Omer Sheikh has a pair. So it's a full. Whenever you have 7 guys that are hitting doubles, I mean, you can't help but think of the Ubers that won it all back 5 years ago, right? In year 2 of the season, wherever you had guys that just would get up there and there was no way to get them out. It's just especially in the second half of the season, every single guy, Taha, Imran, AR, Ibrahim, Ali Jabbar, Umar Jabbar, they all just would get up there and they'd hit the ball and you had no answer for it. And you can't help but look at this black and orange team and think of the exact same thing and it being deja vu all over again.
Well, you even look at the Ayubis from last year when they were dominating the league in the first half of the season. They had the same thing. They had all these guys that were having career years that were hitting well above their career average, hitting extra base hits all the time, and that was producing so many runs. When you've got guys that can hit extra base hits throughout the lineup, that means you're scoring runs off of 2 hits, while most teams probably need 3 or 4 hits to produce a run. So it's a huge advantage. Like, can it continue for the rest of the season? We'll have to see. The Ayubids came back down to earth last year, but whatever juice these guys are on, whatever juice the Ayubids are drinking, I want some of that Gatorade on Sundays as well. It's just phenomenal, like how they've been able to do it consistently.
Yeah, I mean, who else's drink I'd like to check? Safwan Khan of the Nasrid. I think we might be looking at a superstar in the league now. The way this guy has shown up and just been an absolute force to be reckoned with. Think he was picked, I want to say, let's say 15 or 16 in the league overall, second round pick. The Nasrid once again sitting in third place, struck gold in the second round. Last year's Asad Sayed, this year's Safwan Khan, and this guy is just, I mean, he had a bad week last week, which led to his average dropping to 750 on the season, and his OBP is around 820. There's not much more to say.
Yeah, there's nothing you can say about that. The guy's had a phenomenal start to his BSL career. He's been solid at shortstop in the games that I've seen him play. I knew he was going to be a talent. I knew he was athletic. I knew he could hit. I knew he could field. So it was just
There
a
was a lot of talk about him going into it, kind of as a guy that would sit in the second round, but no one expected this kind of return.
no,
At least
no.
I didn't expect this kind of return, and I mean that with all due respect to him. But I heard this guy was hitting the ball really well in winter ball and in BSL nights, and he was really showing that he has the tools and he was only going to get better. And you see it firsthand. This guy's literally he's sitting in this lineup, and not that he's overshadowing other guys on his team, but he's really shown up and been a key contributor, playing an elite position defensively, as well as really holding his own at the plate.
It also helps when you've got when you're sandwiched between Osman Buttar and Asad Sayed, right? So it takes the pressure off of him, and that's good captaincy by Nirvan and putting him in that situation. So he doesn't feel the pressure of having to go out there and produce all the runs and produce the big hits. He's got the guys around him that can do that for him, and when he gets the opportunity to do so, he takes advantage of it. So good on him. He's had a fantastic start to the season, and um, obviously it's a long season. We've only been through 6 games out of the 18, so at the end of the season, things seem to balance out. So keeping up a 750 average for the rest of the season can be very difficult, but he's definitely by far had the most impactful start to rookie campaign that we've seen in a while.
Absolutely, and I think he'd be the runaway winner of the Rookie of the Year by a long shot if we didn't have Abdullah Akhtar of the Ottomans really on his toes and really showing that he's been a force for the guys in Royal Blue this year, with the Ottomans sitting comfortably in fourth place with a 3-3 record. Had a bit of a rough start to the season, but seem to be really bringing it together now and bringing it home. And Abdullah's been fantastic. I mean, he's made some good plays in the outfield, and he's been a power bat for them. He's a 5-tool player, right? He has all the tools you want to build around. And having guys like obviously Taha, Imran, AR, Doc on the mound really allows them to really have a full team. Riz, not to mention Riz, obviously doing his part at shortstop. And the Ottomans sitting in fourth place. What are your thoughts on them so far?
Yeah, like they've struggled offensively so far, but
I don't think we
what we've
obviously haven't
seen,
seen the best of them so far.
yeah, for sure. But Abdullah has been a phenomenal pick where they drafted him. So we all knew he was probably one of the most athletic new players coming into the league. Um, and we've seen that already. I think he's made 2 highlight reel catches already early on in the season, and basically he won them the Nussreds game. I think they won 5-4 or something like that when he hit a 3-run home run to bring them back in it and give them the lead. So he's already made an impact on that team. You can only expect that to continue to happen throughout the rest of the season. And nothing against the other guys on that team, but we really haven't seen Taha, Imran, Ramiz kind of play up to what their career average is. And as the season goes on, that tends to balance out. So those guys are going to probably have a couple of good weeks, and then their average will come back to where it typically is. But Abdullah's basically got them a couple of wins already to keep them in the hunt.
Okay, now in fifth place we have the Abbasids, who we already spoke about briefly before. Z, what I mean, you guys had a big trade a few weeks ago. Bilal pulled off a blockbuster. I think the biggest trade in BSL history. I think it's safe to say, 4 guys for 4 guys, all stars going in both directions. A major shakeup, a huge shakeup, reuniting friends, reuniting guys that have played together in other leagues before, leading to superstars like crazy Ahmad Ahmad and Ismail Akhtar being the focal parts of the trade, going in opposite directions. And then it resulted in the Abbasids getting their first 2 wins of the season last week, as well as the Mamluks finally having a pitcher. Now the Mamluks obviously had some bad cards dealt to them with their starting pitcher being ruled out for the season with an injury, and having Hassan Chaudhry or Omer Wasim or someone else take the mound for them. I think the bigger surprise, in my opinion, or a larger focal point, has been with the unfortunate loss of WK, bringing in Suleiman Man, who looks like the real deal, replacing a third-round pick. WK obviously is a playoff MVP, all-star in the past, but Suleiman brings a brand new dimension to the team. He's a 5-tool player. He's got speed. He can hit for contact. Has some power too. Has been really impressive for them and really been a focal point for their offense.
Yeah, I think that trade worked as worst so far. Worked out for both teams. Obviously, it came as a surprise to everybody, including myself and the other AGM on the Abbas's team. I don't know how much the Mamluks brain trust was involved in it, but it came as a surprise to everybody. But so far it's worked out for both teams. Both teams got points that they needed on that first Sunday after the trade. You expected that Ismail was going to come good eventually. He's not going to
There's
continue
no
his
chance.
his
He's too big.
250 average. He was going to come back. We all know Crazy and Yusuf what they bring to the table. So I guess the shakeup worked out for both teams. Yeah, it was unfortunate. Hassan was stuck pitching for the first 3 weeks of the season. So that helps them with Hassan moving back to the outfield and Ibrahim, a reliable pitcher, taking over for them. So I don't know. We'll have to see who eventually wins that trade at the end of the season. But so far, you can say that trades worked out for both
I'll
of them.
tell you who lost the trade: the Seljuks and the Sultans, because they now have 2 real teams on their backs. I think a lot of people wrote off with the way the Abbasid season was going, the Mamluk season was going, that we'd have an easy, the Seljuks and the Sultans would have an easy path to making the playoffs. Not so much anymore. I mean, the Bulls are kind of struggling. Came off a huge week 1 with 2 comeback wins, and the last 4 losses have been, I want to say, by maybe a total of 3 or 4 runs combined. It's been a tough go for the Seljuks and second year GM AGM Omer Jabbar and Omer Daduk, who, I mean, it's crazy that Daduk, being a star that he hasn't made the playoffs in his career in BSL, and Omer Jabbar hasn't made it in 3 years. I'm not saying they're the reason for it. I'm definitely not saying that. I think they've been fantastic as leaders being in that clubhouse.
No, they're not the reason
But I
for it.
think it's been some tough breaks, and I mean, a few big hits happening in clutch situations, a few errors, and a few small mistakes not going their way, a couple of bounces going in favor of them, and you'd be looking at maybe a 4-2 team, or at least 3-3 team that would be more in the thick of things.
Yeah, well, their Achilles heel last year was not being able to close out games. Right, they were in games for the most part every single week, but they couldn't close out games, or they couldn't come from behind and whatnot. And they proved that in the first week that they could do that because you guys got 2 come from behind wins on
Yeah,
that opening Sunday. But then the kind of that same mentality set in, or the same problem tended to reoccur where they were in games. I think there's a couple of games where they held leads. I think in the Nussreds game, they were they were up going into the final inning and they couldn't
Same thing
close it
happened
out. So
against the
sometimes,
Muggles as well, going into the last inning. I mean, the game was tied, I think, at 12 apiece. But then the Muggles, who at the time were the top team in the league, are sitting in first place, had the heart of their lineup coming up. So that's a big ask for any team to try to hold off.
yeah, but sometimes that's the way
And
softball
five of
goes,
the
right?
six games have been
Sometimes
at
that's the way
Birchwood
it
too. Now,
goes.
again, not making excuses. I feel like the team could have been better. I think there's been some mistakes that we need to shore up on. But I mean, I've told our guys, and I say this with the utmost respect to everyone on the team, is we don't have a squad of fully of the level of talent like the Abbasids or the Mughals in which you can have bad games, but your talent is so superior and there's such a level of impressive play that it would lead to you being able to squeeze out victories. For our team, we need everyone to show up, to put practice during the week, and to really be a team that is united and really putting their best foot forward. I'm not saying that hasn't happened yet. It's led to some bad breaks. And again, if some of those big hits went our way or those
Yeah, they've
bounces
got
went our
depth,
way,
right?
then we wouldn't even be having this conversation. We talk about how they just turned
Yeah,
around from last year.
you've got to play to your you've got to play to your strengths. Their strength is their depth,
Yeah,
right? And you've got to produce runs throughout that lineup. You can't expect your top order to produce all of the runs like some teams do, because the top order may not be as deep or as dangerous as some other teams, but you've got danger throughout that lineup. Like if you've got Umar Jabbar hitting at number
he's been
seven,
great
six
this
or
season, by the
seven,
way.
that's a dangerous batting at number 6 or number 7. Most teams don't
You're
have
right.
that at number 6 or 7, right? So you've got to get runs produced throughout that lineup. You got to score consistently even in most innings. Versus you'll see most teams that are top heavy, they'll produce 3 or 4 runs every second or third inning because that's when their top order comes out and produces those runs. When if you've got depth, you need to produce runs in almost every inning, even if it's 1 or 2 every inning. As long as you keep chipping away and producing 1 or 2 every single inning, you'll end up with 12 to 14
Yeah, no, you're right.
by the end of the
You're
game.
right. Now here, let's play a fun game. Okay, it's a game I put together for you. All right, I'm gonna mention 4 names. Okay, Owais Nouri,
All right.
Usman Basit, Sean Nareen, Basil Jalani. Which one of these guys is not on the Sultans this year? You have 3 seconds.
The second name you mentioned, I didn't hear what you
Exactly,
said.
right? It's just, but that just tells you that this is a team full of rookies, and we don't know if this is the best they're going to be. We don't know if this is the worst they're going to be. There's just so many unknowns on this team. A team that reached that won the championship last year came back with a brand new identity, picking a bunch of new guys who individually have looked very good. Don't get me wrong; they've looked great, and whenever we've played against them, I've heard very good things about them. But like, we have no what do you expect from the Stallions this year?
It's tough to say because we heard a lot about their rookies going into the season. If you remember the GM podcast before the season started,
Mind you,
Shamil was really
that had some
high.
sprinkling of Shamil salt all over it. You
Yeah,
know,
it did, but even guys that had seen some of their guys play, like Oasis was tuning Basso really well. Guys that had seen Oasis Nouri hit in practice were like, "Well, this guy's the real deal. This guy could be a first rounder, or second rounder, right?" But we've seen it in the past. Sometimes it takes guys a little bit of time to adjust to BSL. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the pressure. I don't know if it's the fields, the pitching, or what it. But these guys are talented. I think we've seen that already. So it's only a matter of time before they figure it out, and then the Sultans should go back to what we expected them to be.
fair enough. Now, okay, now we've covered everyone, and I guess their first 6 games so far. But July's a big month. I think it's our this next 4 weeks are the longest stretch that we have of consecutive games before another break being the civic long weekend. So this is kind of make it or break it time. This is the time for guys to make their runs before Super Sunday. And what do you see happening in this big month of July?
Well, it is vacation season, so you'll have some guys that are going to be missing weeks. Hopefully, it's not important guys for the teams, but um, it's going to depend on how everybody comes out in the month of July. That first week is probably going to be very important because it's probably going to set the momentum for the next 4. And we've got some big matchups coming up. Like, I think the Mamluks play against the Seljuks and the Ottomans, so it's an opportunity for them to move up the standing. The Sultans
Yep.
play the Abbasids, so that's an opportunity for them to move up the standings. So it's going to be very telling. Nobody's out by any means, even if you have a bad July, because we do have 2 Super Sundays where you can make up ground at the end of the season. But obviously, nobody wants to be sitting at the bottom of the table going into those final 2 weekends of the regular season.
No, for sure. I agree with you. I mean, these next 4 weeks, although there's a lot of momentum, as you mentioned, it's not the be all end all, but every single game's going to count more. We're going to get a chance to, guys will be refacing teams they've already faced in the past. I know we had some repeat matchups last weekend due to some scheduling changes, but I think they'll get some more familiarity with who their opponents are. Batting charts will be a little bit more populated. So your hitting chart, sorry. So we'll get a chance of really knowing where guys sit. You'll see a bit more strategy coming to play as well. But as you mentioned, the big thing is it's vacation season, and although you don't want to be missing your big guy, you don't want to be missing anyone, right? Because they'll lead to
Yeah,
even
for
even
sure.
if your first baseman is someone that bats 10 in the lineup, if that person is gone for 2 weeks, you have to move someone else to first. You might have subs coming in. It leads to a whole disruption in having that consistency. It's inevitable. You can't help it. And the best teams are able to overcome that, of course, because your team is 12 deep. But at the end of the day, you don't want that to be a big factor. But at the same time, I think it's something everyone is dealing with. And you want to make sure that you can compensate for that and ensure that these absences don't leave you too far behind.
Yeah, but I think teams are deeper this year than they ever
You're right.
have been. So they should be able to recover defensively, offensively. Obviously, if you're missing one of your top guys, and that has a huge impact on your ability to produce runs. But every team going into this second trimester of the season
I love that you've bought into the trimester thing
has something.
for the record.
Yeah, I know. Well, I've got 4 kids, so I've been through 12 trimesters. So
And I mean, well, BSL is number 5 to you, right? So I mean, it's no different. This is
yeah,
your baby.
BSL has plenty of tantrums too, just like my 4 kids. So Um, but yeah, every team throughout the standings has something they need to improve upon. Like the Nusserids, even though they're third place, the Nusserids have struggled to win their second game of the day. Right, that's been their Achilles heel going back to last year. Right, the Ottomans haven't produced enough runs. The Abbasids haven't produced enough runs. The Salyuks lost 4 straight. So yeah, outside of the Ayubids and the Mughals, who probably are sitting pretty at the top, but they're still not running away with it. Like
Yep.
if they lose 2 games the coming weekend, and somebody in the middle of the table wins the other two, they're right at the top of the standings then. So
Yeah. And I mean, like, case in point, 2 weeks before the playoffs started, the team that eventually won it was sitting, I think, in sixth place with a chance to win or be out, right? It's a do or die game for them. Ended up winning the whole thing. So you never know what's going to happen. Super Sunday's going to be huge. We have 2 of them this year. It's going to be a really exciting next few weeks. And hopefully, finally, after a long break and another break that was unwarranted for a lot of guys with some momentum going in certain directions, hopefully we can get some more consistent play and some guys to come out and make some more differences and have more to talk about in our next podcast on the August long weekend.
yeah, I think it's too. I think it's too early to talk about who's going to win it all, because as we've seen in the past, it ultimately comes down to which
Yeah,
team becomes hot at the end, right? I think out of the 5 years that we played, I think a number one seed is only
yeah,
won like once or twice, right? So it ultimately comes down to which team is the hottest at the end of the season. So
yeah. We have a lot to look
we'll see how
forward
it
to. Well,
goes.
thank you all for tuning in for this first trimester podcast. I'm running with it, Zai. I don't care what you say. Thank you guys all for listening. We look forward to seeing you guys this weekend, and I hope you had a good Canada Day and go and play some ball this Sunday. Thanks, Z.
All right, that's Hosh.